Hi, good morning. How are you all doing? This is Lakhi Singh. I'm live today with Ninder Singh Johal.
Good morning.
And if you're probably thinking, why is Lakhi Singh, the fixer, sounding a bit rusty? It's because VJ Sal isn't here to steal the limelight, and I normally don't host, so I have to put my hosting voice on. So this is the new hosting Lakhi Singh today. So welcome Ninder Singh, Sat Sri Akal.
Good morning, Sat Sri Akal. Good morning to you.
How are you doing? What's the weather like in Brum?
It's drizzling, and I think it was the same last time we spoke. I think it was drizzling then as well. So, yeah, it's drizzling.
Yeah, I've just had a look through the window. The weather's not looking that nice, to be honest. So it's great to be actually hosting today. So I'm, how do you say, quite new to hosting, taking the place of VJ Sal. So I should have put my dark glasses on. What do you reckon? Do you think that would suit my profile? Or I couldn't really find my dark glasses this morning.
Well, I think if you'd had your dark glasses on, I would have asked, have you been involved in a hockey match?
Yeah, I think that's true. It would have been handy at that time, actually. So welcome, viewers. Sat Sri Akal, hello, shalom. How many ways of saying hello are there? Ciao, guten Morgen, buongiorno, bona domanianza, that's Romanian, and Sat Shong Hao for my Chinese friends. So yeah, hopefully my Chinese will improve. I need to practice that Fi Shong Hao. That means fantastic day today. So Ninder, we'll start with the saying of the week was, if I can remember it correctly, is that if there's a rocket ship to the moon, just jump on and get on it. That was a saying. And what I wanted to find out from you, is that something you would do? I think I can't remember the full saying, but the idea was that if you can go somewhere, would you just jump on? Would you have reservations? That could be taken in both ways, couldn't it? When you say reservations,
I think a lot of it is dependent on the personality of the person. So they can either be, I'm going to use the word carefully, not impulsive, but somebody who takes an opportunity very quickly, goes with what we call a gut feeling, and can feel intuitively this is an opportunity to take, and they go for it. On the other side are those who reflect, investigate, research, and by the time they've done all that, the opportunity is gone. And really, it's understanding where you sit on that spectrum. And entrepreneurs tend to be the former, so they tend to move quickly. They tend to pursue something very quickly, take the opportunity, and probably on balance will succeed, but will have a lot of failures en route because they didn't take that very sort of dogmatic view. But people who are in the professions, people who work for other people, will probably be a lot more diligent, will probably, and if they're educated, they'll take more time, they'll be more risk averse, and they'll make sure that the ducks are all lined up before they go for it. And of course, classically, a bank manager, if you go to a bank manager for a loan, he will expect that due diligence. He'll want a balance sheet, he'll want projected cash flows, he'll want a business plan to back it up. So almost forcing you to be that reflective person. But of course, with opportunities, it depends whether you want to be what we call a first mover into the market first, and that tends to mean that things are uncertain because you have nothing to compare it with. It's brand new. Example would be Mr. Tesla with his electric cars. He didn't hang around, he went for it. People asked, what's with these electric cars? But he was first mover, and the rest of the automotive industry is now chasing him, keeping up with him. And there are others, of course. Do you remember the Sinclair keyboard? The first computer, and
oh yeah.
You could argue probably ahead of his time.
I think I remember those times.
Yeah, and
I think a lot of viewers probably can't remember that far back.
Yeah, so he was ahead of his time, and perhaps he did jump on the ship, but maybe the market conditions weren't quite right. So, it all depends on opportunity, on timing, the nature of the trip on the ship, the magnitude of it, the risk involved, how much resource it requires, and how much it affects whatever you're currently doing. So in other words, is it 10% of your total worth so you can afford to take the risk and be reckless? That's the right word. So yeah, listen, long-winded answer.
So from your point of view, I think you'd actually put a little bit more thought to it and work out the pros and cons before you made a jump because of your depth of experience in life. I think you'd be somewhat cautious, but yet also very optimistic, depending on how you saw the opportunity. And so it's all dependent upon, because I suppose it's a very sort of fleeting statement, really, isn't it? It's like, would you get into a rocket ship if it was going to the moon, sort of thing? But what if you get stuck up there? What are you going to do? Are you going to come back? So I think it is a good way of probably understanding really how people look at the statement. How they understand it will reflect upon their character and their profile and their mindset and their wonderment in their life as well. I suppose it's all those things.
I think a classic example in property then, and I'm always amazed by people who do this, are those who buy at auction and don't really have an idea of what the property entails until they get into the place. And that's quite an extraordinary risk to take. So I think, that might be somebody who will say, well, why do you may have a sort of an idea, it's in this region, it's on this road, so we've got an idea. But really, when they give you the keys and you walk in, that's when you really find out.
Yeah, I think there's some people that buy in auctions blind.
Yeah.
And I'll be very honest, I used to at one stage buy about 10 properties in a month. Wow. In auction.
Wow.
And nearly all of them were bought blind.
Wow.
So
you were definitely.
So I think I needed myself then, the fixer, to deal with all the surprises. So I think obviously at that time it was a different market because there was ample money. So and there's a capital growth market. So wherever you bought it, pretty much, you were going to get money. So I think it's horses for courses because things seem to change as well. So you can't just, if you went out and bought property at auction now, have to be super careful because you won't get the funding because the lenders are 10 times more risk averse. So before we carry on, we've got a shout out from Cameron Singh. So hi, Cameron Singh. And Meena Kapoor. We've just had a message from Meena and from John Smith. So welcome all. Fortunately, some of the team are still, some of my team are off today, so I can't see all the messages because we're on actually about 9 different platforms in this thing. So we're on YouTube and about 9 groups across the country. Wow. So I think this is the widest, live that we've done using StreamYard. I've also got a question here from one of the viewers. Why are there lots of inexperienced buyers at auctions? I think that's probably addressed to me, I should think. Why are there so many inexperienced buyers at auctions? So that's a good question. I think what happens is auctions sometimes people have a sort of feeling that they're just going to go and pick up a bargain and they don't really understand the numbers. Yep. So the other bit I've got to tell you that I used to speak at quite a well-known person's events for about 100 people at a time about how to buy in auctions from time to time. So I do know a little bit about auctions. And one of the things I did do was that although we did buy blind, we analyzed about 100 properties that are on there. We analyzed about the top 30 that we thought were deals, and we did the numbers. and we did the law of averages, and we did the some understanding of what's required to actually maybe turn those projects around. So the reason there's lots of inexperienced people is I think a lot of people think it's easy money, and they want to go in and bid, and they may be addicted to sort of trying to make money as opposed to understanding the numbers, because auction seems like an easy way of making money, but it's a bit like gambling. So I think people have got addictive nature. They're going to be going in thinking, okay, I'll throw a bit of money in there, I'll make a few bucks. They're not really thinking about the detail. What do you reckon, Ninder Singh?
Yeah, I think the first question I always ask myself, why is this property at an auction? That's the first question, because why?
Would you mind speaking up a bit? Because I think there's something wrong with my volume, so it may not be you.
So I think the first question always you ask yourself, why is it at an auction house? In other words,
right? Okay.
So that's the first question you should ask yourself. Why isn't it sold on the open market? So there's obviously a reason behind it. So I would start with that question first, and then I think, as I said earlier, I would do look at the road, because the road in the area will give you a sort of median price of what a house would go for or be valued or sold. Then I think when you walk into the auction, you know that price because you've done your research. You then compare it to what's been offered. But as you said quite correctly, Lakhi, the middle bit, the bit between what you buy and what you sell, that's the question mark, because until you walk through that door, you're not really going to know what you're going for. So I'll give you an example. I remember there was a house going on auction close to where I live, and it must have been at a third of the price. It was going to auction. And you ask yourself, why is such a fantastic looking house at a third of the price? What we then understood from a third party, that it was so structurally flawed that whoever was going to buy it was going to have to buy it at cash price, because every funder, because of its structural deficiency, would never give you the money. So they knew that half of the market would never buy it because they would rely on external funds to buy it. So it's when you dig in and you find it, and then of course you say, well, then your next question is, well, how structurally flawed is it? And it could mean you have to knock the whole thing down and start again. So, I always start with the question, why is it on auction? Why is it being given at a discount? There's a reason behind it, and it's whether you know what that reason is.
Well, I think that's a very, very good question. I think if you're quite new to auctions and are not really aware of all the risks or aware of all the parameters in terms of how auction houses function, you could easily get yourself into pickle and end up getting literally chopped up and chopped out again in terms of losing money. So I've seen it happen many a time, and I myself have actually made quite a few rookie mistakes myself. Actually, that's why whatever you're saying, I wholeheartedly agree with it. But what are the other techniques I think is useful for the viewers to know is that I used to pre-bid, pre-auction, and try to purchase the assets before they went into auction. And if you're doing quite a high volume of purchases, you could build up a very good relationship with the auctioneers, and they're more likely to be plausible to working with you and probably give you a bit more access to the portfolio of properties they've got and give you more information and probably give you a heads up as well to the reason. So that could be very lucrative, but you've got to be seen to be a bit of a mover and shaker to be able to make moves with the auctioneers. But it is a very it's a bit like the car business, being an auctioneer. It's a very trading sort of mentality. They treat the assets very much like it's a bit like buying a car. You don't really know when you go to auctions. There's car auctions as well. And I've actually been my car to an auction, Leighton Buzzard, I think it must have been about literally 40 years ago. And my dad bid for a few cars, but he went with an experienced a mechanic. So that made it easier, so they knew what to bid for and what risks to take, because the mechanic would know roughly what the worst case costs would be. So I think having the knowledge behind some of these things actually is probably critical to your success. So moving on, I think today's other topic is, I've actually put this topic down, I think, to sort of mix it up a little bit for the viewers, because on the whole, 90% of our conversations are normally around property. But as we have the VVIP, Mr. Ninder Singh, Punjabi MC, Mr. Royalties holder for Punjabi MC, he's got a lot of contacts and knowledge with the business influencers, and he's got a magazine called The Business Influencer. So before we start going into my topic, I'm going to ask him in a minute to tell me what's been going on. Give me a 5-minute overview what's been going on in his week, because I love a bit of name dropping about people that he's been interviewing. So if you could give us some stuff that's going in his magazine and who's interviewed, I think he'll be happy to share that with us, because I think it's going to be public anyway. So that's question one coming up in a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second question is going to be, we have to go through the 10 top strategies to how you can make good money in a recession. So I'm going to literally squeeze a lot of valuable information out of Ninder, which I'm going to literally try to list for the viewers out there, so they themselves can get some invaluable information from him, because we've got, I think, over 950 people now on this group. And I think a lot of people will benefit. So Ninder, tell us a bit more. I think there may be a volume problem, but try again. You might have to switch off and come back in again, but try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine, yeah. Sorry, I think yesterday one of the viewers cut off because we wouldn't hear her. But do tell me, number one, 5-10 minutes on Read. Tell us a little bit about some of the key interviews you've had for the Business Influence in the last week or so.
Okay, so yeah, so a lot of it's around entrepreneurship. So yesterday we spoke to someone. In fact, I put it on LinkedIn yesterday. He's an entrepreneur he's a serial entrepreneur. He's got quite a few businesses. One's a training company. One's a new innovative product in the sanitizer market. As you can imagine, that's good timing. It was interesting chatting to him. He thought both of his businesses would do well for the next 4 or 5 years. The training business, because his training business helps those people who are unemployed. So he suspects the next couple of years there'll be a lot of people unemployed whom his company can retrain. In terms of the sanitizer, it's quite an innovative product. It's alcohol free, which makes it good for the skin, and it's a really, really great product. And obviously he's now just done a deal with the Commonwealth Games. He's done a deal with the Middle East. He's now looking at going into Africa. So, this COVID thing's not going to go away very quickly. So he'll do well in that instance. Interestingly, last week we interviewed somebody who supplies services to the events market, and he's totally different. He's been affected really a lot by the demise of the events industry. And again, we did videos, so when you get the magazine, you'll be able to read their stories, but actually you'll be able to watch a video of them being interviewed around the same thing. Next week, we're interviewing the chair of, check this out, Tesco PLC, the actual chair of Tesco's PLC.
Well, just hold on 1 second there, Ninder. We've got a Deborah Sophia Magdalene saying good morning. So good morning, Sophia. Deborah, welcome on the show. But I think Ninder's going to go on to Tesco now, so that's a very good one. So carry on, Ninder, sorry.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Tesco's coped during the pandemic, and of course the retail landscape with Aldi and people like that coming on board has changed the landscape. It'll be interesting to hear his views on the recent takeover of Asda by the two brothers from the north. Also, as chairman, what does he look for when he takes on probably the biggest job in retailing? In other words, when he employs a chief exec, what does he look for in a chief exec? as he's chairman of both Barratt's Housing, the big construction company, and chairman of Tesco's. What does he look for in a non-exec when he takes a non-exec on? And how does he handle the vagaries of the stock market, share prices up and down? How does he communicate?
Actually, do you know the housing market is obviously going to be impacted? Obviously, we talk a lot about property.
Yeah.
And with Barratt Homes, if he's the chairman of that, that'll be quite an interesting conversation, really, because I think because they're in the top end of the market, they're going to. My guess is they've got a lot of capital reserves, so they've got a lot of land banking behind them. So they've probably pre-planned and actually put all their contingencies in. So I don't see them really having any problems. So I don't think he'll ever be out of a job in that sense. But I think a lot of developers are now struggling actually to raise finance. So because they are probably mid-tier and they've only done maybe 2-3 developments, but they're not probably at the level of actually having deeper pockets or deeper ability to get access to funds. And I think if prices are dropping, a lot of developers are getting stuck on developments they're not going to sell, especially if they're high-end housing above $500,000, because anything that's below the $500,000, there's a bubble there, and that bubble means that developers are artificially selling properties now because the stamp duty break. But I just wanted to sort of cut in and just say that bit. But tell us a bit more about any other key people. So we're happy for you to name drop and tell us like whether you met Sir Richard Branson or viewers probably want to know really who you were moving shaking with. Boris Johnson come round and for a cup of tea.
No, not yet. But we've got the editor of the Sunday Times business. So he's written what a week looks like, a week in the editor. And it's an amazing week. And I don't think he sleeps. Honestly, I just don't think he sleeps. Because obviously he's understanding the world markets as the news breaks in time zones. So that's a really interesting read. We've got an article by a headmistress who took on a failing school. Just imagine a school that's brand, in other words, its name changed 3 times in 3 years. The kids had to buy a new uniform every year because the name kept changing. Imagine 65% of your workforce are what we call supply teachers, contractors, because nobody wants to work there. Could you imagine taking on a failing business, or in her case, a failing school, threatened with shutdown, and how in 5 years she turned it into an outstanding school and was given an OB in the Queen's birthday list? And she'll explain the leadership techniques she used to turn around, in every sense of the word, a failing business.
Can I ask you a quick question? Do you find that your success in business and in general is due to, would you say, 80% due to your own abilities and your knowledge, or is it? Would you say it's 80% down to you having people around you that are working in a very quality way over the last 10 years or so that you upped your game because you're hanging out with the movers and shakers? Which way is round do you think it is, Ninder? It's just a curiosity. I thought I'd ask that question.
Yeah, I think without a shadow of doubt, it's the people I hang around with. It's the quality of people who are much better than me, who I can learn from. We've spoken about this before. The people that are around you will determine your success. So if you surround yourself with negative people, I don't care how good you are, you will become negative. If you surround yourself with people who have got such a positive outlook, they'll drag you up. If you hang around with people who are better than you, they'll connect you to people better than them. And it's a bit like playing on a tennis court. If I want to win every game, I'll just play against my 10-year-old son or my 12-year-old daughter. I may feel very good about that, but it's not going to get me very far. I'd rather be playing a Boris Becker every week. He thrashes the hell out of me, But you know something? Every week I get better because he's forced my game up. And what I've discovered is the more you play with positive people, the more positive people get attracted to you because they know you play with positive people. So I think it's a virtuous circle, and I think it's just once you've on that rung, then your job is to remain focused, remain committed, and make sure you don't aberrate from your plan, and make sure that you stay positive. Because listen, there are going to be times when things are negative. There are going to be challenging times, and it's those people around you that you can refer to. But there's some outstanding individuals out there.
So when you initially started, I'm finding this a little bit now, especially I'm sort of a bit funny in the sense that I always think that everybody knows a lot more than I do. And I always think of myself like a 21-year-old in a bit of like a sweet shop, and that everybody around me, when I meet them, I mean, the type of people I'm meeting in Mayfair, it's a bit daunting sometimes because pretty much everybody that I meet has got some sort of hedge fund, or they're director of Schroders, or Blackstar or BlackRock, hedge fund that's got 500 million under management. So when I meet with them, I'm a property consultant, property investor. They're talking billions of pounds. In fact, I've got a conference call with the director of a company that's actually got £2 billion to invest into England on Wednesday next week, and they want me to talk to them about what we can do, how we can work together, because they want to buy distressed assets.
Yeah.
Now, how did you sort of bring yourself up to speed to be sort of integrating with that type of communication? Because funny enough, I'm finding it in a weird way. I'm finding it quite easy because I just say very little, and I'm very honest about what I don't know. What I do know is my simple way of dealing with it. But I think those sort of people, if you're quite honest with them and quite genuine, I think that's a simple way of winning them over, is in my way of doing business, and just honest about your capability. But it'd be interesting to know really what your angle is, but that's my very simple way of dealing with it. I actually profess to know even less than I know, because and then I try to absorb everything, and when I meet the next big hedge fund, I've understood a lot more. But it's a huge learning curve, actually. This is my second year at Mayfair, but I'm finding it even more daunting now, because you've got to know your stuff now by the first year about hedge funds and IPOs and discretionary funds and all mutual funds, all these new bits of terminology that I'm coming across. And I'm very, very curious, actually. So I want to know everything about everything. So tell me what your take is about 10 years ago, when you started sort of rubbing shoulders with more senior business influencers, because you've got a bit of a name for yourself in the events industry. How did you find it?
I think a couple of things. Firstly, I think you made a very good point. Firstly, you've got to be open to learning. You've got to learn as much as you can and continue to learn. That could be through various things. One is just keep up to date with the current news, so at least when somebody says something, you understand what they're saying. Learning by reading books, learning by hanging around with people who know more than you, so you can absorb all their knowledge. At the same time, I think you've got to be honest about what you do know and what you don't know. And I agree with you, Lakhi, because if you try and purport to know something you don't know, you will get found out. Once you are found out, they will discard you forever, because they'll say this guy was not genuine. So I think you have to be genuine in what you know and what you don't know. And if you don't know something, simply say, I don't know, but I can find out for you, or I can connect you with somebody who I think could help you better. Now, they'll remember that, but they'll also remember the bits that you do remember. They'll come back to you on the bits that you can do. So I think transparency is key. So learn from others, learn yourself, do as much learning as you possibly can, because you can never stop that journey of learning. Be as transparent as you can, and seek out those people that you want to connect with. And you know, over time, if you do things properly, your brand will supersede you. So you should be able to walk into a meeting, and with today's technology, they'll know all about you. They will know all about you. And if they're good at their job, they'll have spoken to a few people to talk about you. So they'll follow it up, because you can Google people's names and you can find out all about them now. And then just follow it up with some research. But yeah, be as transparent as possible and mix with as many good people as you can.
Okay, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is we're halfway into the show now, and I actually want to be almost like a bit more theoretical for the viewers now. Today's half an hour session. What we're going to try and do is slightly different format. I want to literally give you 10 strategies of when you're in business. I think already Ninder's given us a lot of valuable knowledge, but I'm going to make it quite systematic today. But before I do that, I wanted to say shout out to all the people saying hi, and I have to apologize because I can't see all the messages today. Been a bit caught off guard actually being the host. So I do have Deborah and Cameron, John Smith, Mina. I think there's Sonia there as well. There's quite a few messages coming in, but I've got nobody with me to check all my messages for me. So shout out to everybody who's saying hello. And if you do have any questions, put them in on Monday's show. But I'm going to literally get 10 critical strategies that will make you a millionaire in the next year in a recession. Now, the reason I'm asking that of Ninder Singh is he's a lot broader in industry sectors than I am, because I'm primarily property and PR type work and digital marketing I'm getting involved in. But his expertise is across events and meeting business leaders. And with his publication, The Business Influencer, he got his finger on the pulse now about where the money's at. Pa-ching ching. So that pa-ching ching and that knowledge could be the difference between you sitting at home twiddling your thumbs, waiting to work out what's going to happen after furlough, or the difference between thinking ahead and changing your mindset, start increasing your energy, and then creating a new vibration, as Deborah, Sophia, Magdalene would say, creating new vibration in business. So, Ninda, perhaps you'd be so kind as to sort of maybe give us, in a very systematic format, about 10 key things that you think are the key ingredients in this market, a pandemic market, a recessionary market, with a lot of variables that are unknown at the moment in terms of what's going to happen. So what are the sort of basic things, first 5 basic things you should think people that either got a business or a new business? We've touched upon this before, but I want to just consolidate all that knowledge and experience we've had of listening to you over the last few weeks.
Okay, so I'm going to make an assumption that people are running a business. So I'm going to make that assumption. I'm going to make the assumption that I don't know what sector they're in, but we can look at it principally. Just to give you an idea, you were saying background-wise. So from a property perspective, I sit on Accord Housing, which is a £1.2 billion property business. So I'm a non-exec board director there. I'm also
fantastic.
I'm also a board director at WM5G. So this is looking at the rollout of the next technology, which is 5G, and how that will change UK PLC and the world. I also sit on the West Midlands India Partnership. So we're exploring a post-COVID, post-Brexit, where should you be looking to export? And India will be one of those territories that we're exploring. Yeah, I sit on something called the Black Country Enterprise Partnership. So that's a partnership between private and public sector, and so over 1.2 million people. We decide where to spend money, whether it's on infrastructure, whether it's on skilling, whether it's on making sure people are into employment, making sure the roads, making sure the digital works, and just making sure the place works, and how we can help those various sectors. So that takes a much more macroeconomic approach. So those are just some of the sort of, and of course I'm the chairman of the Wolverhampton Towns Fund. That's £50 million we've approached the government to help us regenerate and build on the good work that the city of Wolverhampton has already done. So that gives you an idea of the sort of spread. And I used to be previously president of the Chamber of Commerce, so I know how all these things work. So I have over the years met people who've just started a business. I have met people who are thinking of starting a business. I have met people who've been only in business for a year. I've met people who have been running family businesses for generations, and also have the opportunity through this to meet people like the chair of Tesco's and Barrett's and Sunday Times. So I do meet a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And of course, my own background, starting in music, then moving into events, and now moving into publishing, means I have a good widespread. But what I also found, now we'll come to your 10 things, what I also found is, irrespective what market you're in, irrespective where you are on the business cycle in terms of your business, startup or growing or matured, doesn't matter where you are based geographically, it doesn't matter who's running it, to know the ethnicity, the issues remain the same for all businesses. So here we go. So I think the first thing every business should know, irrespective where you are, irrespective of the business cycle, is, do you know your numbers? Do you understand what your numbers are telling you? Do your numbers tell you where you've come from? Do your numbers tell you where you are now? And do you have the numbers to understand where you're going to be in the next 3 years? That's your first focal point. So I'll speak to someone.
I think I heard a quote somewhere. I can't really think of the quote exactly, but I think the quote was something along the lines of, life and business is all about the numbers, or something like that.
Okay.
So I just thought, actually, if you think about it, if your numbers are right with everything, then everything sort of works out. So I think that's a very good one to start off with.
Yeah. So example, a friend of mine rang me. He runs an events company. He's in trouble, obviously. And he said, I want to go and raise some finance to keep me sustainable. And by the way, I said, you know what my first question was? Can I look at your numbers? And he sent me his draft accounts for the year just finished. I said, that's fine, but that's not enough. That's just telling me where you've come from. I need to know where you're going. What do your numbers look like going for the next 3 years? I need you to do me a detailed cash flow, and you need to explain to me where those numbers have come from. What you're telling me is what you did yesterday. That's gone. That's gone. That gives me an indication of where you could be going, but that's history. I need to know, where are you going? So second bit is, do you know where you're going? Do you have a clue of what your destination looks like? Because if you don't know, I said to him, how are you going to convince someone else to give you the money so you can get there?
Can I just add to that point? But what I find, I mean, I had a huge meeting yesterday with somebody for about 3 hours, and this guy was literally, not going into too much detail, he didn't look very happy. I think he was literally about to cry about 3 times during this meeting. Now, had he just done the basic 2 things you just said, number 1, done his numbers, number 2, understood his forecast, what his business was, he wouldn't be so emotional about it because the numbers would talk for themselves.
Right.
So he said to me, "Oh, can you save me?" What I did is, this goes back to your point, spent 3 hours writing down numbers. I wrote down nearly every single number that I could think of from him. What's the value of your house? What's the value of your, 10 assets? What's the rent? What's the income? What's the interest rates? How much, is owed when you need to pay it back? So I did pretty much like a mathematical model. And do you know what I said to him? I said, "You got no problems, mate." He goes, "Why is that?" I said, "You haven't got any problems. It's just the biggest problem is one person here. Who's that?" He goes, "Oh, my investors." I go, "No." He goes, "Bank?" "No." So I said, "It's you." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, you're the biggest problem because you're not looking at your numbers properly. You're just looking at them. You're not really looking at the forecasting. You're not really understanding your numbers, not understanding really how to run your business. So you're the biggest problem." I said, "You need fixing." So he's going to come back next week and we're going to have a session with him. But I said, "You got no problems at all. If you just listen to the basics and put the fundamentals in, you'll be fine." So we've got two things there. So now, what are the other 8, Ninder?
I think, yeah, just to build on that, on your meeting itself. So my friend said, "Well, I'm not very good at doing numbers. I don't know how to do cash flows." I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, "Just get someone in who can help you draw up the cash flows. You'll have to give him the information because he can't just conjure that up, but he can help you put that together." So my advice to anybody is, if you're not brilliant at numbers, one, try to learn a bit about it if you can. It will help you. But secondly, get someone in who can help you translate what's in your mind onto a piece of paper so it becomes something you all understand. So I suggested somebody to him who could help him draw up a 5-year cash flow, 5-year projected balance sheet, and a 5-year projected P&L, which is a profit and loss account. And I said, by going through that exercise, it'll crystallize what's in your brain, because you'll have it out on paper, and you'll be able to take something then to a funder who will now be able to understand what the future looks like. And also, by the way, it'll force you to look at your numbers yourself. Now, what that means is it's interesting when you're up against the wall, how you do start to look at every line of expense. And if you look at every line of expense, you will find, I guarantee, money you're spending that you'd forgotten you've been spending, money that just comes out of your account because you don't look at your account that often because you're so busy generating wealth. And you'd be amazed how efficient you could become, all from studying your numbers.
Just to make a point in relation to that point, excuse me, is that when I went through this guy's numbers, I just realized that about 3 of the assumptions that he's made in business were completely incorrect. And but I didn't really want to laugh. And I didn't think he had any problems. And I just thought, I've actually probably made all those mistakes myself in the past.
Yeah.
But I've had to make them a couple of times in different ways to realize where all the flaws are. So I think for the viewers out there, you need somebody, not necessarily an accountant, but you need somebody who's savvy enough to actually pick out. But your perception of things can be deceptive. So perception is deception in business, because if you don't really understand the assumptions you've made, actually could be catastrophic to your business. So he's made certain assumptions, which I'm not going to go into. From my point of view, if he just changes his mindset on them and manages them slightly differently, then he's got a perfectly fine running business. And a lot of it then is creating a sort of more positive energy around your business. And if you're confident about your business, other people will be confident about it. But what he's done is he's lost confidence in things because he didn't understand them. And then he's brought a lot of stress on himself. People see you stressed. I said to him, what's going to happen? It's a bit like being in the jungle in business. if you're pretend to be a wounded animal, people aren't in business aren't really going to be forgiving unless you're in the charity business or something, or the church in church or godliness. They're going to be thinking, what do we get out of this guy? They're not really going to be thinking, right, take my money. We don't want anything. They're going to be thinking, how do we have our food? And you're their food. So you really got to be on your game, really, in business. So I think that's quite critical. So I think number one is numbers. Number two is understanding your cash flows, I suppose, and your forecast. So continue.
Yeah, I think the third thing then, so we're talking about sort of a pandemic, is communication. So how do you communicate internally and externally? So what I mean by externally is, are you communicating with your customers, your current customers? How often do you communicate with them? And are you keeping those lines of communication open so that they know you're still there, still doing what you've always done? And it's back to your other point. By doing that, if you are in trouble financially, then by having that dialogue with them, there might be some where you can work something out. So, if you've got suppliers that you need to pay, be open and frank with them and say, look, things are a bit difficult. Can we renegotiate how we pay? Because what most people do is they disappear under the bed and they ignore the phone calls. And then back to your point about mindset, then the mindset changes, and even the smallest problem becomes a big problem. And before you know it, all you can think about is problems. You're not in a solutions based mindset, and you get drowned. And I mean, you get drowned. And if you've just been proactive at the start, got your numbers right, understood where the critical points were, and then start to communicate those, it's amazing where you can be and how quickly you can get out of this. I mean, you must know this. You must see this every day.
Well, number three, yeah, definitely. I think there's 2 or 3 levels of communication as well. Just for those of you out there who are in startups or mid-tier, top tier. If you're in a very large corporate, really need a stakeholder chart when you're managing projects or new business setups, because the stakeholder management charts, the way they work is you write down all your key people and how they need to be communicated to, and then you got to do those. Set up a communication chart. How often you need to communicate with them, who's going to communicate with them, what type of communication is it going to be? Email? Is it going to be text? Is it a phone call? So that's at the top tier. For if it's you've got like 2, 3 staff, you're a one-man band, then what you need to do is pretty much what Ninder says. You just need to be very clear, really, about which are the pivotal points in terms of ensuring the success of your business. And if you're not doing that, you're going to just get people's backs up if you owe money to somebody or to a supplier and you haven't paid them on time. So amazing points which sound really basic, but they're actually the fundamentals of any business, really. So what's the next one? And because I think we've got about 13 minutes now to pull out about another 7 out of the bag. No pressure.
If we run out, we can always pick them up next time. I think
That's true.
I think the next one is, so just to pick that point, when someone's in trouble is when you ring them, they don't take your call, or they take a call, never ring you back. They failed in their first test of communication. They haven't been upfront with you, and it'll become more frantic as it goes on. Also, what will happen is the word will get round that this person's not returning calls, not paying the bills, and back to your point, it becomes a jungle then. What people then start to think is, this person is going down. I want my pound of flesh before he takes me down with him. And before you know it, the whole thing has escalated and everybody's after you. And anybody who sold you something yesterday, it now no longer wants to wait 30 days, but wants his money now because he's heard from other people who've told other people who've told other people. So I think communication is really, really key. But that's linked to your numbers, so it's quite a natural follow through. So picking up from communication, so you're talking to your stakeholders, which could be your suppliers. Are you talking to your customers? And are you keeping your brand visible? So what people tend to do when the first two hit, they go underneath the bed, they stop communicating, the brand disappears, and it further accentuates the fact that the business or the person is in trouble. So part of that communication is, are you investing in your brand? And that doesn't mean money. That simply means picking the phone up, talking to everyone, and making sure that your brand, and of course there are, and you're an expert at it, there are free tools like social media which allow you to keep your brand uppermost in people's views. I mean, you must have a view on that.
Right. So the effective management of your brand is actually critical to your success. So what's number 5? Go for it.
Number 5, I think, is, are you now building on that marketing? So have you now started to look at other people outside of your area that you normally do? And this is free. Have you reached out to people? Have you made some calls to people? Have you asked people, can you refer me to other people? Have you looked at that? I think it's number 5. I think number 6 is, have you scanned the market? Have you understood what opportunities are out there? And are you actually out there making sure that people know you're in the marketplace for opportunities and you're looking for them?
So just to repeat the last one again. I think I might have missed it because it's that again.
So the last one is, we're talking from making sure the brand's out there, but also making sure you tell people that you're always looking for opportunities, more sales. This is free stuff. This is just saying, somebody like Lakhi, listen, I could do with some more additional sales in product A, B, C, and D. It's not costing me anything, but I'm telling you, and hopefully you'll tell others.
So basically what you're saying is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you've got good solid relationships, but you're not creating a sort of positive business relationship in terms of asking and improving your sales, you may be doing a disservice to your own business by not being proactive. I suppose that's the key point, isn't it?
And my next one also is, it's a changing world. And if things are quiet, have you even looked at your marketing materials? Have you looked at your current website? Have you looked at your current marketing strategy? Have you made sure that all of that stuff is in place? Have you got your staff trained for new opportunities? All those things you've always wanted to do, have you done them?
Okay, so having the training, the marketing, the communication, and actually the engagement is critical as well. I suppose if you think about number 8, I think we've covered quite a lot actually. I suppose the other one could be really how effective, which comes back to the last point you just made, effective your staff is, because they're going to be, I suppose this sort of comes back to not just an individual, but also a team of 4 or 5 people or 10 people. If they're not consistent with your message as an organization, you're only as good as your weakest link. I think that's an old business point that people say sometimes. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think your staff will be crucial. And so example, take my example. We have a small team, but we were all trained in events. Pandemic hit us, so we had to look for opportunities. That's the next one. And we looked at the skill set within the organization, and we had a set of skills that we thought we could apply to another marketplace, which is publishing. And we all transferred, all of us, straight over to publishing, and we're into our second issue of the magazine, already planning the third and the fourth one. So we've started a business from scratch with no publishing background, but people with a set of transferable skills, and we just moved them all across. Now, the beauty for me will be, is when the events come back on, we're a bigger business, because suddenly we'll be recruiting, and we've all done that because we've never had the time in the past to do it. So look at your skill set, look at training, look at your staff, and say, what else can we do what are the skills have they got that allow us to enter either additional products or a new market?
Okay, so I think that's another nugget for you. You've got the training and the consistency of your brand and the communication. Then you've got really what are new products that you could bring out that from your current business as it is, but with minimal effort. For example, I met with a coach yesterday. Took a lot of meetings in one day. Met with a sort of like an energy coach yesterday who helps people to raise their energy. And so he was saying he does 4 different things to get business out. One is one-to-one, one's energy, one's one-to-one, one's one to about 100 people. One is doing online sessions, but he says he wants to move everything to online. Tell me more about that aspect. What do you think? Do you think that's the way to go? I think in some ways you've done that, but how easy is to do that? Certain businesses are stuck in their ways.
Yeah, listen. I think it is the word everybody was using only a couple of months ago was the word pivot. Can you pivot? And I think 2 things. Firstly, I think it's one of mindset. Do you have the mindset to go outside the boundaries you're comfortable with? So in other words, are you comfortable in going into areas that make you uncomfortable? That's the first thing, because only when you enter areas that are uncomfortable, in other words, something you're not familiar with, only then will you grow, because you'll be forced to learn new stuff. So I'm learning a hell of a lot about the publishing game. That's good. That will make me a better person. It'll make my team better. And when we come to the events, I think we'll be even stronger because we'll have picked up some additional skill set. I think, and I've run out of numbers here, even though we talked about numbers, I think we're on the 10th, but I'll pick that up and pick this up. Are you still networking? Are you still talking and communicating with people you know? Now, you might say, well, it's a bit difficult. We can't meet people. But actually, we're doing it right now, Lakhi Singh. You're in London. I'm in Birmingham. So we're still networking. So are you networking? And remember, we have the tools now that it doesn't cost you anything to network. As much as I enjoy having lunch with you, Lakhi, we've just got to accept that it's not possible. And now we have new tools like StreamYard, like Zoom, which should enable you really to network with even more people than you would do otherwise.
There we have it. I think being a Punjabi, we don't really need to network because it's in the blood.
Yeah.
Because technically we're there as sevadars. In Punjabi, that means we provide a lot of service.
Yeah.
It's in our nature anyway. It's in the DNA of somebody that's called Singh X or X Singh. So Singh means lion, and lions are forever networking actually. So I actually find that when I'm in the building, whenever I'm in the building, if I bring a guest into the building, I get about 6 or 7 people at least walking into meeting from reception to the boardroom in our offices and literally saying hi to them. But it could be the cleaner to the director of a large hedge fund to security. But I think we sort of enjoy the aspect of actually greeting people, because I think the Punjabi thing is something called Chardi Kala. For those of you not aware, Chardi Kala actually means to be in good spirits at all times. So although we may have setbacks in our lives, I'm sure everybody has some setbacks, but the idea is to always remain in the state of Chardi Kala, which is good spirits. So that actually could be networking could be number 9, and Chardi Kala, staying in good spirits, actually could be another one, couldn't it?
I was going to finish with the word mindset, because you referred to the word mindset. If you do all of those 9 things, then I think you're in a good place and you'll have a positive mindset. But that's a consequence of doing the other 9. But also, getting up in the first thing in the morning and having that positive mindset. And I think you have that positive mindset, believe me, you'll have a successful day. You will have a successful day. But you've got to do all those things that we've just referred to in very quick 15 minutes that we did.
I think we're running out of time, but I did actually get quite a lot of messages from Deborah about 5G and the word perception, and also expanding the comfort zone. So we'll have to address them next time, but thank you, Deborah, for the inputs. We're a bit short of staff today, so I couldn't get all your messages in. For anybody I've missed today, apologies. But there we go, 10 points for you, all of you. And thank you again for everybody. This is Ninder Singh and Lakhi Singh signing out.